Hello and welcome to another C# coding homework exercise from Windows Forms. In this one we are going to work with arrays and create an application called Total Sales. Now in the chapter 7 folder of the student sample programs of the book that this exercise is from, there's a text file called sales.txt. Now the text file is a simple text file like this, and it contains a bunch of numbers, obviously with decimals. And they want us to create an application that reads this file into an array and displays the array's content in a list box control and calculates and displays the total of the array's values. In other words, they want us to sum together all these numbers at the end. Display them first and then at the end display the total sum. So I already have the form, very simple, one button, one list box. When we click the button, it loads the sales.txt file into a list box and performs the calculation. So I think this is gonna be fairly simple, so let's do it. And we'll start, since we are working with text files, we'll do our try catch to make sure that when the file is not available, we don't crash the program. Instead, we'll catch the exception and display an error message. So in our exception, I'll just call it EX, and we are going to simply display a message box, show, and it will simply display the EX.message. Whatever the error message the computer generates will display in our text box. Whatever happens to the file, if it's not available or if there's any conflict or something like that, the computer catches the error and displays it into our message box. So in our try, we can create an array. Now we can simply count how many elements there are in the text file. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we could create an array with the size of 7. But what if we wanted to add another number a little later or take some away? It's better when we have a little more flexibility. So instead of hard coding the size, we will figure it out as we go, so to speak. So the first one, I'm going to create an array of strings that reads the text file completely. So it's gonna be a string array called all lines, and it will simply read the file that read all lines. And by doing that, it will read line by line and create an array of that size. So there are 7 numbers, so it will have 7 elements array. We don't have to specify it here because it will simply read and calculate how many elements are needed from the file or how many lines there are. And the file is called sales.txt, and I have it in my debug folder, in the bin/debug folder of my application. So this is a string. I'll be working with numbers, but it's a text file, so everything is a string. We have to convert it later. So I'm going to create another array, this time for the numbers. So it's gonna be double because these are all decimals, and I'll call it numbers. And this one equals a new array of double, and the size of it is the same as all lines, because we are simply going to move whatever we read from the file and we move it into our numbers and convert it into doubles. And this way we don't have to specify the size manually. We can specify the size of this array because they will be of the equal size. They will contain exactly the same content, except this one will have doubles and this one has it as a string from the text file. So this one will be the all lines dot length. That's the get the total number of elements in the dimension of the array. So that will give us the size of the array we need. The next thing we need a counter to loop through the indexes of the array. So I'll just call an integer counter and I'll initialize it to 0. We always start with zeros for the arrays, or usually. And we'll need to sum up all the numbers together, so it's just going to be a double sum, and again I initialize it to 0. So now we have to populate numbers from all lines. So this is our string array, and we have to move that into our numbers. So from all lines to numbers array. And we'll use a for each loop. You could use other loops, but let's say in this case let's do for each loop. And since we are reading from the all lines, which is a string, so we have a string variable of, let's say, a value, or you can call it whatever you want, and it's in all lines that we are reading from. And as we read through, we will assign that number or the value. In this case it's a text. We'll convert it to double and assign it to our numbers. So our numbers of the index counter, which at the beginning equals 0, we have it initialized to 0, equals, and now we have to convert it to double, so convert to double, and we are converting the value that is being read from the all lines. Again, it's one element at a time, so basically the first time it's the first index or index 0, then index 1, 2, and 3. And we loop through all of them. That's why we use for each. It will simply loop from 0 to the end. So we have a number in our numbers counter. So now we can add that number, since it's already converted to double, we can add it to our sum. So plus equals, sum, remember, is initialized to 0, so at the beginning it's going to be 0 plus whatever the first number is. So it's going to be numbers of the counter. Again, it's already converted to double. Sum is of type double, so there's no conflict. So now we can output the number. Remember, we have to output all the content from the sales.txt to our list box, and at the end display the total. But the total will be displayed once we loop through all the numbers. However, we can display each number one by one as we loop through them. So we can do lst output, which is our list box, .items.add, and we can add our numbers again from the counter with the counter index. So this is all happening with the loop or within the loop. One thing we still need to do is to increment the counter so we can move to the next index. Otherwise we would simply be writing the same numbers of index 0 because the counter is initialized to 0, so we have to keep increasing it after each time we process one of the numbers. So after our for each loop, we can output the total. Remember, our sum is being plus equal of each number, so each number is added to it, and at the end of the loop we have this final sum of all the numbers in the text file. So we can display lst output.items.add, and we can do something like, let's do it on a new line and just write total and display the sum. So we can do sum.toString, and we can display it as number, so that will format it with the decimals and everything instead of just making it as like a string, just bunch of numbers together. So this will have a decimal point and comma and everything. So this is it. This is all we need to do. So let's run it. And when I click the open file and calculate totals, here's all the 7 numbers and add it together. And you can calculate them together and see if it matches, and I know it does. So it's working fine. Now let's try if our exception is going to be caught. So with that, I'm going to do this. I'm going to rename sales txt to sales, let's say 1, doesn't matter. And I run it again, so now the file won't be found. So when I click the button, I get an error message in our text box, could not find file, blah blah blah, whatever the path is. So it catches the error as expected and displays it properly as well. So that's really all there is to it. Fairly simple, one loop, two arrays, but they're kind of the same. We create one to read the file, and then from there we move all the content into our other array, where we use it as a number, where we format it to double instead of having it as a string, so we can perform then our calculation of sum. Alright, so this is it. I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.